my review of the Byrds album, the Notorious Byrd Brothers. It was released in 1967 and produced by Gary Usher. So this album would have been the kind of the second and third Byrds album I got, since I got it at the same time as Younger Than Yesterday. I honestly don't remember anymore which one I listened to first. Probably Younger Than Yesterday, since it came out first. Yeah, I've had this for a long time. It's always been one of my favorite Byrds albums. It's kind of a crazy album to like figure out what's going on with, because the band like basically came apart while they were making this album. Crosby was fired, and Michael Clarke was either fired or left. I'm not really sure which. But and he was also kind of like in and out on the album. Like I think he left at one point and then came back, and then they even brought Gene Clark back for like 3 weeks, even though it's kind of debated whether or not he's even on here. But yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on in this album. A lot of extra kind of session players on it. I think the production on it kind of is like the most experimental of this time. It's got a lot of like phasing and just different like production tricks and stuff that Gary Usher was trying out here. So that's it's interesting. I like the production on this album, but I feel like it does some weird things with the vocals, which I guess I'll get into more when I talk about the individual tracks. So yeah, it's really, really crazy album. I'm not really, like, I've kind of read stuff in books about who like plays on what, and then seen on like Wikipedia, but if Wikipedia is wrong, then I'll probably be wrong with some of the playing stuff. When I mention, I'm not going to like go into who played everything on every track. But this album opens with Artificial Energy, a song by McGuinn, Hillman, and Michael Clarke gets, I think, like his second songwriting credit. It's a cool opening track. It's got some cool brass and stuff going on it. I like Clarke's drumming on it. I like Hillman's bass a lot. I feel like around like probably from like Fifth Dimension to hear like Hillman's bass playing, it's just really cool. I mean, I like his bass playing on the first two albums, but it's like the third album and Younger Than Yesterday, and on this album, like he just plays some really interesting stuff. So I think Hillman's a really underrated bass player. But yeah, the only thing about this track that's like a little iffy to me is the vocals. They've got some kind of weird effect on it. I'm not sure if it's like sped up or what it is, and I've actually read that the band themselves weren't that crazy about the way it turned out. But really, like, I've kind of gotten used to the way it sounds now, so it doesn't really bother me anymore. But it does make it like, I'm not really sure who's actually singing lead on this track, which I think it's just Hillman and McGuinn together, but with like the effects on the vocals on some of the songs on this album, it actually makes it kind of hard to tell who's singing on some of these. I actually think that this, of like all the Byrds albums, this is like the hardest one to pick out who's singing what. Second track, Going Back, is a Goffin and King cover. I really like it. I think it fits really great on here, and it kind of, even though I guess the 12-string, to me at least, isn't as prominent on it here, other than like at certain points in the song. It kind of sounds the most like the older Byrd stuff, or well, one of the most like older Byrd style sounding songs on the album, because they definitely, more so I think on this album than on the previous two, they've started to move into kind of a different sound, like a little bit away from the jangly stuff. But yeah, this is one of the tracks that doesn't have Crosby, doesn't have Michael Clarke, you have Jim Gordon playing drums. Yeah, I think it's a really good cover. Crosby, I guess, didn't want to put this on the album, and he was in competition for his song Triad, which I think the tension over that's one of the things that led to his departure, amongst other things. The third track, Natural Harmony, is a song by Chris Hillman. It's another really cool song, another one that has kind of a weird vocal effect on it, but I think it's a lot more effective on this track than it is on the first one. And yeah, just a cool, almost like trippy kind of song. They definitely, I feel like they were influenced by, or I think I've read actually, they were influenced by the Beatles' Revolver around this time. You kind of hear that on here. They're getting into that kind of like trippy type of sound. Fourth track, Draft Morning, is by Crosby, McGuinn, and Hillman. Apparently it was, I think, just by Crosby, and they had like recorded the backing track for it and everything when they fired him from the band. And then McGuinn and Hillman just decided, well, we'll keep the song, but they couldn't remember the lyrics or something, so they like wrote their own lyrics and then recorded it, which I think he never really forgave them for. But I think it's one of the best songs on the album, regardless of how it got on there. I think that like the backing track with the band playing, and I'm pretty sure this is all like the actual band and not like session guys, but I think they play really well on it. It's a really cool backing track. It's got a lot of sound effects and things that come in and out of it. And yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a really great song. One of the best on here, even with its kind of like troubled origins. The fifth track, Wasn't Born to Follow, another Goffin and King cover, and another kind of standout for me on here. So it's really catchy. It's got this really weird kind of instrumental section where they were experimenting with so much like weird stuff on this album, which I could see some people being kind of put off by, but I think it just sounds really cool, and I really love all the weird like experimental stuff that they're doing. The sixth track, Get to You, a song by McGuinn and apparently either Chris Hillman or Gene Clark, or maybe even both. I guess there's some debate about who helped McGuinn write it. But this has always been one of my favorite songs on the album. It's kind of a weird song, really. Like the chorus is kind of weird, but I just really love the verse parts, and the chorus, like, it fits with the song and it works, but it's kind of weird. But I don't know. I've always really liked the song. I think it's a really great song. The seventh track, Changes Now, sung by Hillman and McGuinn, and this one's got a little bit of the country sound to it that they're gonna go all into on the next album. And it's another one that has one of the weird, trippy solo sections that I just think is really cool. Which kind of so does the next track, Old John Robertson, another Hillman and McGuinn track. This one, the singles version, was one of the bonus tracks on Younger Than Yesterday, I believe. But I'm more familiar with this version because I listened to this album all the way through more than I listened to the bonus tracks. But yeah, I think it's another one that's really catchy, short little song, but it's got some cool stuff going on instrumentally. Apparently David Crosby might play bass on this, or he either plays bass on this or one of the other songs he's on this album. I'm not sure which. But this is the one that it says on Wikipedia, but then I've also read that it was another one, so I don't know. Then the ninth track, Tribal Gathering, song by Crosby and Hillman. This one's really cool, kind of reminds me of like Renaissance Fair or Everybody's Been Burned off Younger Than Yesterday. Kind of continues that like kind of sound, as does the next song. But just really cool. Just all these tracks where they're playing as a band, where it's them doing the music before they like everything went crazy and they all split up. Those songs really make me wish that they had been able to kind of continue as a band, because just the stuff that they're doing like that is so cool. It's kind of a shame that they had to break up. As much as I love the stuff that comes after, it kind of sucks that like this version of the band couldn't have taken this kind of stuff a little bit further. And then the 10th track, Dolphin Smile, by Crosby, Hillman, and McGuinn. This is another one of my favorites on the album. It's a really cool, I don't know, kind of just chill, like kind of happy song. It's got this really weird intro sound that I think was apparently like McGuinn scratching his guitar strings. But yeah, just another really cool song. And then the 11th final track, Space Odyssey, by McGuinn and Hibbard, is kind of like a space shanty, I guess, is what it reminds me of. I mean, I know McGuinn really likes sea shanties, which who can blame him? Sea shanties are awesome. And he kind of like, is into space too, so he kind of makes a space shanty here. And yeah, I could see people not liking this. It's got a lot of like Moog stuff going on, kind of weird, but I think it's really cool, really catchy. I like the weird, Moog stuff going on in the instrumental part. So to me, it's a really strong closing track, but I could see people not being as into it. So this one has some cool bonus tracks. Kind of has a Moog Raga, which is another like instrumental that uses a lot of Moog, obviously. Bound to Fall. It's an interesting instrumental, but not something I listen to a lot. Then you have Triad, which is probably the most interesting bonus track because it's the infamous song that Crosby wanted on the album and Hillman and McGuinn didn't, and they like fought over or whatever. So I really like the song. I think it's a good song. I think it's catchy. I enjoy it regardless of the subject matter. But I can kind of I don't know where it would have fit on this album, because to me the way this album is, it flows perfectly, and adding something to it, I think it would mess with that a little bit. So I don't know. On one hand, it's a good track, so it sucks that they left it off the album, and it sucks that they weren't cool with putting a song on. But at the same time, it kind of doesn't fit. I don't know where you would put it. So yeah, it's cool that it's in the bonus tracks, I guess. And then you have a version of Going Back, which I think has Crosby on it, and also maybe Michael Clark. So that's cool. And then an alternate version of Draft Morning, and another instrumental Universal Mind Decoder that's honestly mostly interesting. For at the very end of it, you have a kind of a recorded section of the band arguing during the recording of, I don't know, either Dolphin Smile or Tribal Gathering, one of those songs. But if you listen to that, you can kind of see why these guys broke up. So yeah, Notorious Byrd Brothers, really, I don't know, it's a really fascinating album, both from the standpoint of what was going on in the band, and then also for the music itself, which is excellent. And I mean, it's such a great album. It flows great all the way through. It's really crazy that they could make such a good album with all of this stuff going on. I mean, I guess a lot of the really standout tracks were kind of done already, or part of that, but still, just the fact that they could finish it off with so much shit going on is pretty impressive. I think a lot of that credit probably has to go to Gary Usher, and I like his production on this album a lot. I think I like it a little bit more than his production on Younger Than Yesterday. 'Cause something about Younger Than Yesterday, I'm not crazy about the drum sound on that album. I think the drums sound a lot better on this album. But yeah, Notorious Byrd Brothers, definitely check it out. It's one of their best albums. It's not the most representative of them and of their sound. I think this one, to me, gets of their original 5 album, or of the original 5 albums, it kind of gets the furthest away from the 12-string jangle. There's so much other instruments and so much experimentation and stuff going on in this album that you don't really get as much of that sound. And then there are a lot of things going on with the vocals, so you don't really get, I don't think, their traditional vocal sound on this as much either. But still a really great album. Highly recommend it.